Let's knit the welt on this gnome. So we have knit our requisite stitches flat, and now what we need to do is we need to go down to the first row of this contrast color and pick up stitches. Once we have the stitches, we're going to knit them together on the two needles. So we have the working needles, but picking up stitches is always easier if you can go down a needle size or two, or even a lot. It's so much easier to get a tiny needle through these stitches than even the working needle. On this gnome, we are slightly bothered by the fact that the way we've picked up stitches leaves this big ridge of stitches here to kind of contend with. Now, of course, gnomes are fairly straightforward in that they don't need to look perfect. So if you are not sure if you're picking up in the exact first row of stitches, or maybe you should go one higher, the good news is as long as that you're roughly consistent, and I only mean roughly consistent, things will still be fine. If you wobble from one row to a higher row every now and then, it's not going to make a huge difference to the outcome of this. The process will be the same for you, whether you're using DPNs or magic loop. It's just that instead of having the stitches on 3 or 4 sections, you will have them just on 2, half and half. The first step is figuring out which is the first stitch in line with our first stitch on this needle. Sometimes having the beginning of round helper can help, and sometimes knowing where that yarn is where we picked up from can also help. When I'm doing this, I look at the bump on the needle, I look at the bump right below the stitch on the needle, and then just kind of follow that bump down on the reverse stockinette fabric. And that's how I kind of go for it. I like to describe reverse stockinette fabric as having caps and smiles to the stitches. So the caps are sort of the top curving ones, and the smiles are the bottom curving ones. And in this one, the exact right stitch to get would be a smile rather than a cap. But because we've just picked up in this section here, things do get a little messy. So just try to be consistent again. So this is the very first one in line with this one. If you pick up and slightly to the right or left of this, what will happen is as you're doing this welt, the fabric will torque a little bit, and so you may get a little bit of twist and variation. So getting the first one in line is one of the most important steps to getting a nice clean welt. Then what we need to do is push these stitches that rolled under from the pickup out of the way, and then just find the next smile and the next smile, and then we're going to keep going all the way across till we think we've gone at least as far as the number of stitches on this needle. It's okay if you go past it, and it's also okay if you don't do all of them. You'll just need to go back and dig them up. All right, this looks like I'm about as far as I need to go. I'm going to go one farther just in case. I could count the number on the needle. This looks about like the right number of stitches. I could count if I wanted to make absolutely sure that I had the same number on the needles, if that was important. That's something you can do, and just kind of tuck this end out of the way for now. All right, so we have our 2 stitches. We have the picked up stitches in back, and we have the working stitches in the front. And now using our regular gauge needle, we're going to go through the front of the first stitch on the first needle and through the first stitch on the back needle. And then we're going to draw the yarn through both of those. This acts kind of like a knit 2 together, but obviously we're not knitting 2 together side by side. We're knitting 2 together across this gap between the 2 needles. If you've done a 3-needle bind off, this will feel very familiar. Just resist the temptation to start binding off as you go. We want to have working stitches at the end of this, not a bound off row. You can see that as we go, we're taking this tall amount of fabric and we're squashing it down flat into an amount of material that'll stick out. If we want it to, it'll go kind of round, or we might go down, or we can do up with it. There's a couple things you can do with welts depending on the pattern, but it is taking that and sort of collapsing the space right down to whatever row we've picked up from. And since we've picked up so close, we are right back to where we started in terms of height. This is 12 rows above this picked up row, and this is almost right one row above it in terms of height. You can see that really clearly here. This is the amount of height, and this is all the height we have here. So we've taken that fabric and we've created a really cool three-dimensional effect with it.